Hello everybody and welcome along to another edition of the Rebel White Ball. I think our 92nd and all. And I suppose we have to start with last night's terrific performance by the Cork minor football team. You may remember that we were bemoaning their, I suppose, dismal performance against Kerry a couple of weeks ago when they were beaten by 14 points without scoring a point from play. Since then they got a chance to, I suppose, get the show back on the road when they played Tipperary and played really well that night. And the big test, I suppose, was last night in the Munster final. And my God, did they turn it around, beaten by 14 points by Kerry, and now last night winning by 11. And from the very word go, it was a really polished performance, and you know, people taking on responsibility. It was kind of direct football, and you know, it was. There's absolutely no doubt in the world that it was a major surprise. But like, I suppose that can happen. You're talking here about 17, 16 and maybe some cases a 15-year-old. And but anyway, any time that a Cork team beats Kerry in football, it has to be good for Cork football. And you know, there have been so many poor performances in the past. This one will be greatly welcomed. I suppose, you know, the team is probably, every minor team has its own little idiosyncrasies and little unusual facts coming through. But the fact that the team captain, Colin Gillespie, whose father's a Mayo man, by the way, played football down in West Cork, I think, with Kilmeen at one stage, that he captained the team, and that certainly is first for that club, and he played a really leading role as well. Then you have Brian Hayes inside at full forward. I believe his father is a West Corkman, Grot Hayes, who played with Cabri Rangers. He got 2 goals and 3 points last night. But the stage in the first half when Cork got 1-6 to no score, and then when Kerry had a player sent off in the second half, they drove on, and like, the team is without doubt improving. And in Saturday week now they play Derry in the All-Ireland, and in the All-Ireland quarter-final. Now the way this minor works is that they pair the two provinces together, Ulster and Munster, Leinster and Connacht. So Kerry are also through to that quarter-final where they play Tyrone. And if anything, I would imagine that Derry were probably, you know, they went through as runners-up in Ulster, but the fact that, I think it was in the Ulster final, the scoreline was 4-8 to Tyrone, 16 points to Derry, which tells its own story, if you wish, in that Derry were probably every bit as good as Tyrone. So this is going to be another big challenge for Cork. The Ulster Championship, far more competitive than Munster Championship, and they actually play a bit of a round robin up there as well. So the two teams coming out of Ulster will be seriously experienced side. And you know what, there's a chance maybe at some stage that down the line, if Cork did emerge victorious and Kerry, that we could have the trilogy of this particular series. I did kind of notice one thing last night, that a number of these players that played on the Cork team had played in schools matches over the past couple of weeks, and I think this is a big issue for Cork teams and development squads, that they should be, there is no doubt in my humble opinion that schools games should be an integral part of what, and club games, of how these players develop. I heard the story now, I don't know how true this is, that there's some player on a hurling development squad, and he'll play with his club, and he's going to play with development squads, and he's not going to play with schools. Now, if I was in charge there, he'd be simply dropped off that panel. I think that these school matches and club matches are every bit as important. Like, the under-17 is actually called Under-17 Development Championship. So it's a thing that you know, I think that needs to be addressed here in Cork in particular. I'm not saying for one moment there is tremendous work being done on development squads, but taking these players in, we had, if I was to go over to ladies football, a few weeks ago we had an All-Ireland Under-14 Championship. I don't know where the idea of this comes from, and I believe that some of these players, you know, haven't played with their clubs this year, and I don't know. But anyway, that's an argument for another day. This is the first time in 12 years that Cork defeated Kerry in a Munster final, and by the way, it was Kerry's heaviest defeat in a Munster final in 23 years. I thought you might like to know all those little things. Anyway, well done to everybody associated with it. The management, who, in fairness, after the dismal performance against Kerry, got their act. I'm not saying they got their act together, but they certainly worked the oracle with this team. This weekend, of course, there's so many big matches, and from a Cork point of view, it's going to be about Cork and Loud and Cork Camogie on Saturday at 2 o'clock. And I suppose before we say anything, we've got to say that the role of supporters here is as much as an important factor to this team as any of the team selections. And we saw that, in their game against Kerry, where supporters really appreciated by the players, and I think that's important, and it would be nice if that could happen in Cork football, to get supporters back into the game. And we'll see now on Saturday. They play Loud. Look, there's no doubt about it, this is a game that Cork are expected to win. Loud, admittedly, they have been improving. Mickey Hatter's taken them over successive promotions, and they won the Division 3 league final. Big win over Limerick, 5 points. They beat them 114 to 12 points. Admittedly, then in the Leinster Championship, they were well beaten by Kildare, 222 to 12 points. I don't have to talk to you about what happened to Kildare last week in the Leinster final. But there's no doubt, like, they have some good players. Sam Mulroy and Kieran Byrne playing the forward line. They have Bevan Duffy and Niall Sharkey, I think, operate around defence, and Tommy Dunn around midfield. But in terms of clubs and all of that, like, there's only 42 clubs, I think, up in Loud. It's the smallest county in Ireland, and you've 259 clubs in Cork. They did meet away back in an All-Ireland final in 1957 it was, and a late goal by Loud Cork Court that day. There was 72,800 people at it. And if you check back through the history, what was amazing about that year is that Cork did not beat Kerry. A crowd called Waterford did that for them. There's not going to be a revenge for 57 or anything like that. There will be a number of changes to the Cork team. Like, obviously, I think Chris Kelly is going to come in goal instead of Micheál Martin, who's out injured, and probably Ty Corky will come into defence instead of Kevin Flahaff, who unfortunately is out for the season as well. But I mean, there's no doubt that, like, Loud will come here with this blanket defence and all of that, but Cork should be able to get through it. And the big thing is, like, to get the ball into their scoring forwards, Cathal O'Mahony, like Brian Hurley and Stephen Sherlock. Now, the objective is obviously to win and to be in the draw on Monday morning for the second round of the qualifiers, where they can meet either, Limerick, Roscommon, Donegal or Kildare. So, obviously we're looking forward to it, but I'd be major surprised if anything other than a Cork victory than tapping in Páirc Uí Chaoimh at 2 o'clock. So look, if you're around the place, you may call into that one. This weekend, of course, the Provincial Hurling Finals are on as well, and Galway playing Kilkenny. And since Galway came into Leinster, like, this has its kind of modern day rivalries, if you like Galway were operating Tailteann Cup for years, and it was a big decision for Leinster to take them in, because for counties like Dublin or Wexford, it meant, look, they weren't going to be winning as many championships. And this game has taken on a little bit of an extra interest because of the famous incident in the league in the round robin down in Salthill, where a late free gave Kilkenny the victory over Galway, and then you had the infamous handshake between Henry Shefflin and Brian Cody. So I think that'll be a good game Saturday evening, 7 o'clock. And then on Sunday, we have the Munster Hurling Final, another opportunity to see Limerick. Do you really want that? But I suppose the big story here is the emergence of Clare. From the start of the season, when they were considered to be, down at the bottom, they weren't, they were seen as themselves in Tipperary as not being the team to get through, but they have. So it's going to be a big game for both counties, of course, but like for Clare in particular. The Joe McDonagh Cup Final is on, and normally, this is the second competition, and the interesting thing about this year's final is the way Kerry have got there. They lost 2 matches in the league format to Down and Offaly, and when they played their last game, it was basically about fulfilling a fixture. They had to travel to Antrim and win, and then Offaly, who were raging hot favourites to get to that final, possibly win it, had to lose to Carlow. And would you believe it? Both happened, and then it came to scoring differences. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Kerry up there against Antrim, and that game goes on at Croke Park at 4:30. There's a curtain raiser to the Leinster final. There's a young man on that panel called Luke Barrett. His father, Pat Barrett, is from Inishannon, played with Valley Rovers in another era. But regardless of what happens here, both of these teams are still in the preliminary hurling quarterfinals, because Cork will play the winners and they will have to travel to that, and Wexford play the losers. So I think, look, there's no doubt that Antrim are going to be the favourites and probably will win it. This is Kerry's third Joe McDonagh final. They lost in 2020 to Antrim and last year to Westmeath, so they'll be definitely hoping for an improvement in fortunes there. Tailteann Cup, my God, what a success this competition has turned out to be. Last weekend we had 7 games in it, and in those 7 matches the average victory margin was something like 4.6 points, and that tells you about the competitive nature of it. Now they have it kind of divided into a northern and southern section. Of course, some people will be critical of this, but it's the first year of it, and there are going to be improvements next year, but I think it has turned out fine. In the northern section on Saturday we have the 2 quarterfinals, Leitrim playing Sligo, and that's going to be a local derby up there in Leitrim at home, and in the other one it's another local derby, if you wish, with Fermanagh playing Cavan, and you've got to say that probably Cavan are the favourites, probably not alone to win that game but also to win it out. And then on the southern side on Saturday you've Carlow playing Westmeath, and even though Westmeath are travelling, I still fancy them to get over that one. And New York now came into this stage of the competition in the quarterfinals. They're flying to Ireland. I'm not sure what airport they're going to be using, but maybe not could be the option. But they're playing Offaly on Sunday, and look, you can't see beyond Offaly there. But when these are over now, the 2 semi-finals are going to be played in Croke Park, so the final, and there's a good bit of exposure. I think it's getting good publicity, and it's not before time that this competition was brought in. I don't know what we were doing, cutting ourselves, thinking that these counties, how they survived, is a testament to what happens in club, where it's really important. So anyway, then we have the other All-Ireland qualifiers. We mentioned the Cork game. We have Monaghan playing Mayo, and that's obviously going to be some massive match on Saturday. Monaghan travelling down to Mayo. Maybe the home advantage would swing it the way of Mayo, and then you've Clare welcoming Meath, and there was a time past when you wouldn't even discuss this. Well, first of all, Meath won't be in the Tailteann Cup, but Clare have, they're a formidable side. I know they were probably disappointing, maybe not to progress in the Munster Championship, but they will make it difficult for Meath at home. And then the big game on Sunday at I think it's 1:30, and that's the Northern Derby between Tyrone and Armagh. And I suppose we can't let the occasion pass without some mention of what happened in terms of the Ulster final last week. There was one observation about it. Seemingly, if you watch it in RT, it was terrible, and if you watch it in BBC, that they thought it was an amazing game of football in terms of tactics and all that. But look, it needed a lot of dressing up. But well done to Derry. There was a huge achievement for them. But to be blunt about it, you would hate to see a team playing that kind of football winning All Ireland, and they probably won't either, to be fair about it. Even though the club championships are not going to be starting for quite a while in Cork, well, not that, it won't be long coming around. The colleges and the divisions, and this is where these divisions struggling in all, the majority of them are, and the 2 colleges, MTU and UCC, play a competition without county players at this time of year, and one of them will eventually get as far as the quarterfinals of the championship. Look, there's various arguments made about why these divisions are not successful. Things have changed beyond all doubt. Clubs are so important now; they get so many chances. But anyway, it starts next week. The hurling, I think, is on Tuesday night. The 2 first games in that: Avondhu playing Carbery. That game going on in Coachford, and Carrickdown playing Muskerry. And then it moves to football then a week from today, and the 2 games are Avondhu playing Beara and Carbery playing Imokilly. Fielding teams here is probably a huge achievement, let's be honest, and a few people that are trying to keep this going. The Camogie and the Cork Camogie teams are absolutely flying, both having wins last weekend. The intermediate team, big win over Wexford, and the senior team turned the form of the Munster Championship completely around when they decimated, if you like, Clare. Both of them play on Saturday. Both of them play at 5 o'clock, I think, where the senior team travel to play Dublin. You'd expect them. They're playing in St. Peregrine's GAA club in Blanchardstown, and I'd expect them to win there. And it was good last week that Orla Crona was back. I think she probably ended up on the full forward line with Katrina Mackey and Amy O'Connor. And Cork have so many strong lines, but the half-back line in particular, where you have Laura Hayes, Laura Tracy and Saoirse McCarthy. And they're motoring well, but of course, obviously the big thing here is the All-Ireland. That's going to be what they're going to be judged on, absolutely no doubt about it. The ladies footballers are now into the All-Ireland series. They're in a group with Waterford and Donegal. Okay, they beat Waterford, but I think it's so important to beat Donegal as well when they play them in a few weeks' time, because if they top their group, it means they avoid playing Meath or Dublin in the quarterfinals and maybe the semi-finals, and they are the two favourites in it. Gotta be nice to say, well done to the West Cork ladies. That board in Cork, I think there are 4 divisional boards. Now, from what I can gather, probably the West Cork one is maybe the most active. But anyway, it was nice to see them and signing a sponsorship, 3-year sponsorship deal with Drina Co-op, and this is another proof of the growth of ladies football. There's that a company like that will get involved, and why wouldn't they? This, it's a hugely growing sport. So yeah, that's the story with the Camogie team, and I'd expect both of those teams to win again. And look, they're going to progress to the knockout stages, I would imagine. Well, the soccer season, what a way it ended up last week, and for all your Liverpool fans, look, we were going to wear a black tie, but by God, the big thing about that last week when we were watching it was, and for those of us of a certain vintage, Hillsborough came back, and when they were reporting all the hassle outside the ground, you were waiting. But thankfully, it was the most important thing in that match. Yeah, Liverpool were beaten, they'll get over it, but UEFA set up an inquiry. Now, I'm not sure what happened. Is it ironic that this game was going to be played in St. Petersburg, but Russia decided to invade Ukraine? That was taken out, and that was moved to France, moved to Paris, and you'd imagine they're used to staging sporting events. It was a damaging indictment, and the fact that they're going to be staging the Rugby World Cup next year, and after that you have the Olympics there. So it's going to be interesting. They were saying that there was a huge number of fake tickets, but I think there was about 2,500 Liverpool fans did not get into the ground. Anyway, that was that. So the season is practically over, or is it? You have these now friendlies starting up, and there was a time when just countries did put their own thing, but these friendlies now are a lot more structured, and UEFA got involved in the act, and then they're known as the Nations Cup or Nations League, and Ireland are playing in Group B. Now, the only advantage of playing it obviously is games, but if they do well, they get promoted up into Group A, and the games are more lucrative from that point of view. But they're going to be playing it 4 matches in 11 games, and they start against Armenia on Saturday. And look, so they can't but improve in their form, because in the 2 previous Nations Cup, I think they played 10 matches, won none, and only scored 3 goals in that. And of course, last night you saw where Ukraine defeated Scotland in a World Cup qualifier, and that, everything that happens positive from Ukraine, there's not an awful lot. That was a delightful story, if you like. In terms of rugby, and after all of you out there who became the team of Rog at the weekend, when they had that incredible victory over Leinster, it's back now to the United Rugby Championship, and the quarterfinals on this weekend, and from a Munster point of view, they're going to have to play their quarter-final game against Ulster tomorrow night away. They have travelled up there in the past, and they have won, and if they were to win, they'd have to play their semi-final away as well, and I think it's Leinster taking on Glasgow. The other teams, the Storm, the 3 South African teams are in there. So look, it's hopefully that Munster can get their show back in the road. They were a tad, it was great to be supporting La Rochelle last weekend, but the big thing for Munster is they must try and get up there and be able to beat Leinster. So as we always say, look, until the next time, take care, mind yourself, and if you get a chance, get in there and support those Cork footballers on this Saturday.